Your life begins to change the moment you stop obsessing over what's wrong and start deliberately focusing on what can be done about it. Most people live on autopilot inside their problems. They overthink, they complain, they replay what hurt them, and they wait for circumstances to magically improve. The more they stare at what's broken, the larger and heavier it feels, so progress always seems far away. The truth is not that they are weak or unlucky, it's that their attention is trapped in the wrong place. Attention is fuel. Wherever you pour it, that part of your life grows. Feed your problems and they grow. Feed your solutions and they grow. The shift that changes your future is simple but not easy. You decide that from now on, your energy, your thinking, and your daily decisions will move in the direction of solutions, not problems. That requires responsibility, focus, courage, self-control, and consistency. But once you start, your sense of power returns. You are no longer just describing your life, you are building it. The first real turning point is taking full responsibility for what happens from now on. That doesn't mean everything that ever happened to you is your fault. It means you accept that whatever has happened, fair or unfair, your mistake or someone else's, it is now your job to respond to it in a way that serves your future. Blaming is easy and endlessly available. You can blame your parents, your city, your job, the economy, your past, or the system. But blame never builds anything. It only hands your power to something outside you. When you decide, this is my life, it's not perfect, but I'm in charge now, your thinking, your reactions, and your behavior start to shift. You stop waiting for rescue. You stop defending your pain. You stop repeating stories about why you can't change. Instead, you start asking, what can I do now? What can I control today? You notice your habits, your patterns, your excuses. You trade explanations for effort. You don't need permission, applause, or perfect conditions. You need honesty, discipline, and consistency. Responsibility is not a burden, it's your power. The moment you own your next step, your life stops being a story of what happened to me and becomes a story of what I chose to do with it.
Once you accept responsibility, you have to train your focus to go where progress can grow. Your life will always follow the direction of your dominant attention. If you constantly focus on what's missing, who hurt you, or what isn't working, your brain will build mental habits around lack, resentment, and failure. You'll start believing there are no opportunities, not because that's true, but because your mind is only scanning for what's wrong. Focus is like a muscle. If you never train it, it gets pulled around by distractions, comparison, fear, and noise. Most people wake up and immediately think about stress, problems, and complaints. That becomes their daily mental routine. To change, you must become aware of where your attention goes moment by moment and then redirect it on purpose. That doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending problems don't exist. It means you refuse to give them more mental space than they deserve. You see what's wrong, you decide what matters, and then you bring your full focus to actions that create improvement. 5 minutes of deep, undistracted focus on a meaningful task can move your life forward more than 5 hours of scattered busyness. You start asking better questions, such as, what is my priority right now? What small step would actually move this forward? And what can I learn from this? Over time, your brain starts to treat clarity and progress as normal, and you carry a focused mind into an unfocused world. That's where real change begins.
Even with better focus, fear will try to hold you back, so you must learn to act before fear makes the problem feel too big. One of the most damaging habits is waiting. Waiting until you feel ready, until you feel confident, until you're not scared, until the situation feels perfect. The longer you wait, the more your imagination exaggerates the challenge. A simple conversation turns into a crisis in your mind. A small task becomes a mountain.
Your brain is designed to protect you. It doesn't naturally distinguish between real danger and ordinary discomfort. If you hesitate, it assumes something is wrong and starts feeding you worst-case scenarios. You'll fail, you'll look stupid, this will go badly. If you obey that voice, you build a habit of hesitation, and one day you wake up realizing you've delayed your own life for years. You don't overcome fear by thinking about it. You overcome it by moving while it's still small. Action creates proof. One email sent, one phone call made, one step taken tells your nervous system, I can do hard things and I'm still safe. Courage rarely feels like confidence at the start. It feels like a racing heart, shaky hands, and a decision to move anyway. When something scares you, don't ask, how do I get rid of fear? Ask, what is one step I can take before fear grows any bigger? If you build that habit, your challenges stay solvable, your momentum grows, and your future is shaped by action, not avoidance. No matter how much you move forward, life will still hit you with setbacks, and that's why you must take full ownership of how you react when things go wrong. Everyone experiences disappointment, failure, rejection, and unfairness. You don't control all events, but you always control your response, and that response is what shapes your character, your relationships, and your path. Reacting is automatic. You complain, you get angry, you shut down, or you blame. Responding is intentional. You pause, observe your emotions, ask what would help, and choose your next move. Setbacks are like mirrors. They show you how you handle pressure. Do you become bitter or better? Do you repeat the same old story about how life is against you? Or do you ask, what can this teach me? What part of this is mine to change? Taking ownership of your reactions isn't about blaming yourself for everything. It's about understanding that no matter how unfair something is, your attitude and your decisions are still under your control. That's where your self-respect comes from, knowing you did not let anger, ego, or self-pity lead your life. When something goes wrong, sit with it before you speak or act. Feel what you feel, then ask, how would the strongest version of me handle this, and move in that direction. Over time, this habit turns pain into wisdom, mistakes into lessons, and setbacks into training for a stronger future.
To respond wisely, you also have to catch the moment your thinking starts going in circles. One of the quietest ways people stay stuck is not dramatic failure, it's mental loops. You get a worry, a doubt, a what if, and instead of moving toward a solution, your mind keeps replaying the same thought with slightly different words. It feels like hard thinking, but it's really just spinning. You feel more and more anxious without any new insight or useful action. That is the difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection leads to clarity, decisions, and learning. Rumination leads to exhaustion, confusion, and paralysis. The key is awareness. As soon as you notice you're asking yourself the same questions with no new answers, why am I like this? What if this goes wrong? What if I fail? You need to interrupt the loop. Tell yourself, I've already thought this. What's new here? If nothing is new, you must shift from thinking to doing or to writing. Putting your thoughts on paper breaks the cycle. You can ask, what is the real issue? What am I afraid of? What is one concrete action I can take today? Sometimes you don't need more analysis. You need a pattern interrupt. Stand up, move your body, go outside, change your environment. Your brain loops to try to protect you, but thinking without action usually makes fear bigger, not smaller. When you repeatedly catch and redirect circular thinking, you build mental discipline. Your thoughts stop controlling you, and instead, they become tools you guide toward solutions. In moments of pressure, most people rush into panic instead of creating space to think. Something unexpected happens, a message, a bill, a conflict, a piece of bad news, and your heart rate jumps, your breathing gets shallow, your thoughts speed up and narrow around worst-case outcomes. In that state, your decisions are usually impulsive and short-sighted. You say or do things you later regret, not because you're a bad person, but because you never learned to insert space between trigger and response. In a world that rewards speed and constant reaction, calm thinking almost looks unnatural, yet it's exactly what you need. Creating space doesn't mean doing nothing. It means pausing long enough to breathe, to let the first emotional wave pass, and to ask better questions. Is this really an emergency or just uncomfortable? Do I actually need to answer right now? What matters most in this situation? You can train this by simple daily habits: 5 minutes of quiet before your day starts, journaling your thoughts at night, or saying, "Give me a moment," in heated conversations. Your body is part of this process. Relaxing your muscles and slowing your breathing sends your brain a signal that it's safe to think instead of fight, flee, or freeze. When you protect mental space, you protect your future. You stop making permanent decisions from temporary emotions and start living from clarity instead of chaos.
When things feel messy, one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, what would actually help right now? Not what would impress people, not what would feel good for 10 minutes, not what would allow you to escape, what would genuinely help. Most stress comes from living in the past or the future, replaying what already happened or fearing what might happen. This question forces you back into the present moment. You scan your situation honestly and look for the most practical step. If you're overwhelmed, maybe what actually helps is turning off your phone for 20 minutes and finishing one small task. If you're emotionally flooded, maybe what helps is stepping outside, breathing, and drinking water. If you feel lost about a goal, maybe what helps is writing down all your options, choosing one small experiment, and trying it for a week. This question turns you from victim to problem solver. It pulls you out of meaningless complaining and into useful behavior. You can also use it in conversations. When conflict rises, ask yourself, what would actually help this discussion? Maybe it's listening more, asking for clarification, or postponing the talk until both of you are calmer. The more often you ask this question, the more you train your mind to search for solutions instead of staying stuck in emotion. Over time, you waste less time spiraling and spend more time doing what actually improves your life, even in small, simple ways. Another crucial shift is replacing complaining with one simple action every day. Complaining is one of the easiest, most socially accepted habits on the planet. You can complain about the weather, your job, your body, other people, the government. There's always material. It gives a short feeling of release and connection with others who complain, but it never changes the situation. In fact, it drains you twice, first when something goes wrong, and second when you talk about it endlessly. If you want a different life, you must treat your words and attention as valuable. The rule is simple. When you catch yourself about to complain, pause and take one useful action instead. If you're complaining about mess, clean one small area. If you're complaining about being behind, work for 10 focused minutes. If you're complaining about a relationship issue, decide whether to communicate clearly or to accept and let go, but don't just repeat the same story to other people. You don't have to fix everything at once. You just have to prove to yourself that you will do something instead of just describe how bad it feels. This tiny habit, repeated every day, rewires your brain. Discomfort becomes a signal to act, not to spiral. You start respecting yourself more because you see yourself as someone who moves, not just someone who talks. Over time, you'll notice your language becoming lighter, your energy more available, and your mindset more solution-oriented, not because life got easier, but because you stopped wasting power on pointless complaints.
To make good decisions, you must also learn to calm your emotions so your choices stay clear. Emotions are part of being human. They carry important information. Anger can show a boundary, sadness can show loss, fear can show risk. But if you let emotions drive your actions in the exact moment they are strongest, they will push you toward reactions you later regret. The first story your mind tells in an emotional storm is usually distorted by past pain, assumptions, and fear. If you act on that first story, sending the angry message, quitting in the heat of the moment, saying words you can't take back, you often create bigger problems than the one you started with. Emotional strength is not the absence of feeling, it's the ability to feel fully and still choose wisely. That begins with noticing your physical signals: tight chest, fast heartbeat, clenched jaw, racing thoughts. Those signals are your internal alarm saying, "Slow down, your thinking is about to be hijacked." When you sense that, breathe deeply, count a few seconds before speaking, or physically step away if needed. Then ask, what do I really want from this situation long term? Do I want peace, respect, progress, understanding? When you reconnect to your real intention, you can choose words and actions that serve it instead of serving your temporary anger or fear. You won't get this right every time, but every time you pause instead of exploding or shutting down, you build emotional leadership. You become someone you can trust to act with integrity even under pressure. Finally, you must keep going even when your results feel too slow. In the real world, meaningful change usually comes quietly and gradually, not in dramatic jumps. You can work for weeks or months without seeing big external results, and that's where most people give up. They think, if it hasn't worked yet, it's not working at all, and they walk away right before the compound effect kicks in. But growth doesn't follow your preferred timeline, it follows its own. You didn't build your old habits in a week, so you won't build new ones in a week either. When you're doing the right things, showing up, learning, adjusting, acting consistently, slow progress is not a sign of failure, it is the process. Your job is not to control the speed, your job is to control your commitment. Discipline means you keep moving, even when it's boring, even when nobody notices, even when your feelings are flat. The results you want are being built in those invisible days. Your skills are sharpening, your mindset is hardening, your resilience is deepening. Comparing your journey to others or expecting overnight change only steals your focus and makes you disrespect the work you're already doing. Instead, measure your progress by questions like, am I more consistent than last month? Do I recover faster from setbacks? Am I acting more from intention than impulse? If the answer is yes, you are winning, even if the outside results are still small. The only way you truly lose is by stopping. So when everything feels slow, remind yourself, slow progress is still progress. Stay steady, stay honest with your effort, and trust that the seeds you're planting will grow if you keep showing up.
In the end, focusing on solutions instead of problems is not a motivational slogan, it's a full way of living. It means taking responsibility instead of blaming, training your focus instead of drifting, acting before fear grows instead of waiting, owning your reactions instead of exploding or shutting down, catching your mind when it loops, creating space instead of panicking, asking what would actually help right now, replacing complaints with useful actions, calming your emotions before deciding, and staying consistent even when growth feels slow. None of this is about perfection. You will mess up, overreact, hesitate, and complain sometimes. The difference now is that you know there is another way, and you can choose it again and again. Every time you do, you move your life one step further away from helplessness and one step closer to strength, clarity, and growth. Your future doesn't depend on what you wish would change. It depends on what you decide to do next, and that decision is always in your hands. Your entire life begins to shift the moment you decide that from this point on, you are responsible for what happens next.
This doesn't mean you take the blame for every bad thing that has ever happened to you. It means you accept that whatever has happened, fair or unfair, your fault or not, is now your responsibility to deal with. Many people stay stuck because they live in a constant loop of explaining why they are where they are. Their parents didn't support them, the education system failed them, the economy is terrible, their boss is unfair, their friends don't understand them, the world is against them. Blame is easy. Anyone can point fingers, but blame does not build anything. It doesn't improve your skills, it doesn't change your habits, and it doesn't move your life forward. Every time you blame, you hand your power to something outside you, and you quietly agree to stay the same. Responsibility is different. Responsibility says, maybe this isn't my fault, but it is still my life, and I will decide what happens next. That decision changes how you think, how you respond, and how you act. You stop waiting for rescue, for the right person, for the perfect timing. You stop defending your excuses and start examining your patterns. How am I spending my time? What choices am I avoiding? What truths am I pretending not to see? Growth starts when you say, enough. From here on out, I own my effort, I own my decisions, and I own my direction. You won't suddenly become perfect, and you don't need to. You just need to commit to showing up differently, to asking, what can I do right now, instead of, why is this happening to me? Once you accept full responsibility for your next step, you stop being a passenger in your own life. You become the driver. That is where your power is. Not in changing the past, not in controlling other people, but in deciding every single day how you will think, what you will focus on, and what you will do with the circumstances in front of you.
Your life quietly follows the path of your dominant focus. If your attention is constantly locked on what is missing, what is broken, who hurt you, or what has not worked yet, your brain will build habits around frustration, anger, and helplessness. You'll wake up already scanning for what's wrong: the bills, the arguments, the stress at work, the noise on social media. Without realizing it, that becomes your mental default. You start to believe you are stuck, not because there are no options, but because your eyes are trained to see only obstacles. Focus works like a muscle. If you don't train it, it gets dragged around by whatever is loudest, scariest, or most distracting. To change your life, you must become intentional about where your attention goes. That doesn't mean pretending everything is positive or ignoring real problems. It means refusing to feed those problems more attention than they deserve. When your mind starts replaying failures, regrets, or fears, notice it, pause, and ask, is this thought helping me build anything? Is this where I want my energy to go? If the answer is no, you must gently redirect your focus towards something you can influence. A clear goal for today, a single task that moves your work forward, a skill you can practice, a small act of self-respect. Deep, undistracted focus on one important thing for 30 minutes can be worth more than an entire day of half attention. Train yourself to leave conversations, content, and environments that constantly drag your focus into gossip, comparison, and negativity. Progress grows in clarity. It begins when you keep bringing your attention back to questions like, what matters right now? What can I learn from this? What is one useful step I can take today? Over time, your brain learns that your job is not to obsess over problems, but to search for direction. A focused mind is a strong mind, and a strong mind does not crumble when life gets difficult. It looks, it feels, it decides, and it moves.
Fear grows in the space you give it. The longer you sit and think about a difficult decision, a conversation you need to have, a change you need to make, the bigger and scarier it starts to look in your mind.
Your brain is wired to protect you, and when you hesitate, it assumes there is danger. It doesn't know the difference between real danger and emotional discomfort. It treats them both as a threat. So it starts showing you worst-case scenarios. What if they reject you? What if you fail? What if you look stupid? What if it all goes wrong? If you listen to that voice and wait until you feel ready, you train yourself to pause instead of push, and that hesitation becomes your default. Months or years can disappear this way, not because the thing you want is impossible, but because your imagination has turned it into a monster. You don't overcome fear by spending more time thinking about it. You overcome fear by moving while it is still small. Action is what proves to your own mind that you are not powerless. It can be a tiny step. Send the message, apply for the opportunity, have the honest conversation, book the appointment, start the first 10 minutes of the task you keep avoiding. Courage rarely feels like confidence at the start. It feels like a pounding heart, shaky hands, and the decision to do it anyway. Once you act, your brain gets new information. I did something hard and I'm still here. It wasn't as deadly as it felt. That is how fear loses power, not by disappearing, but by no longer being the one in charge. You don't need every answer before you begin. You just need to know the next right step and be willing to take it before your fear writes a bigger, darker story in your mind. When something feels overwhelming, ask yourself, what is one small move I can make right now that moves me forward? Then do that. Momentum is built one decision at a time, and once you have momentum, fear has a much harder time stopping you.
Every human being faces setbacks, failures, disappointments, rejections, unfair treatment, sudden changes in plans, and moments where life seems to punch you in the face without warning. You don't get to control all of that, but you always get to control how you respond, and that response is where your true power lives. Two people can experience the same setback and end up in completely different places because one chooses to take ownership of their reaction, while the other chooses to sink into blame, self-pity, or denial. Your first reaction to a problem reveals a lot about your current mindset. If you immediately complain, attack, shut down, or search for someone to blame, you are reinforcing habits that keep you stuck. Ownership means you refuse to let the event decide your future. Instead, you say, "This happened, and I will decide what I do next." That doesn't mean pretending everything is fine, forcing fake positivity, or saying the pain doesn't matter. It means you acknowledge what happened, feel what you feel, and then consciously choose a response that serves your growth, not your ego. You pause before you explode. You breathe before you walk away. You ask, what can I learn here? What part of this do I control? How would the stronger version of me handle this? Instead of rehearsing the story of how unfair it was, you look for the lesson, the adjustment, the change in behavior that will prevent you from repeating the same mistake. You don't confuse responsibility with guilt. You're not claiming that everything is your fault, only that your attitude, your focus, and your next move are always your responsibility. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control whether their behavior turns you bitter or better. You can't stop every setback, but you can prevent it from defining your identity or stealing your future. Study your reactions. Do you withdraw, explode, complain, or blame? Those are not personality traits, they are patterns, and patterns can be changed. Each time you choose to respond with maturity instead of impulse, you build quiet strength, self-respect, and resilience. Over time, setbacks stop being permanent wounds and become temporary challenges, because you know that even when life doesn't go your way, you still get to lead yourself through it.
One of the most subtle ways people stay stuck is by letting their thoughts spin in circles instead of moving towards solutions.
It usually begins with a single worry, doubt, or what if, and because you don't catch it early, your mind keeps returning to it with the same angle again and again. You replay the conversation, the mistake, the fear about the future, convinced that you're thinking it through, but nothing new arrives. No plan, no decision, no peace. That's the trap of circular thinking. It feels like effort, but it produces no progress. Your anxiety increases, your energy drops, and your clarity disappears. Yet you keep following the same mental path because it's familiar. The key to breaking this pattern is awareness, not judgment. You don't need to attack yourself for overthinking. You need to notice when your thoughts are looping instead of leading somewhere. Signs include mentally revisiting the same scenario without new insights, feeling more stressed after thinking than before, and asking the same questions, why am I like this? What if this goes wrong? Without ever reaching an answer that changes your actions. When you notice this, interrupt the loop. Tell yourself, I've already thought this. What is new here? If nothing is new, shift from thinking to doing or to writing. Putting your thoughts on paper forces them into structure. Ask, what is the actual problem? What am I afraid of? What can I do today that would help, even a little? Then choose one small action. Sometimes your mind doesn't need more analysis. It needs a pattern break. Stand up, move your body, change your environment, breathe deeply. Also, learn the difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection asks, what happened? What can I learn? What will I do differently? And leads to decisions. Rumination just repeats discomfort and worst-case fantasies. Protect your attention from content and people who constantly trigger fear, comparison, or drama, because they give your mind more material to loop around. You won't always catch yourself right away, but every time you do, and you redirect your thoughts toward clarity, action, or acceptance, you strengthen your mental discipline. Gradually, your inner world becomes less noisy and more purposeful, and you stop mistaking mental spinning for real problem solving.
Most people are trained to react fast, not to think clearly. The moment something unexpected happens, a harsh message, a financial shock, an argument, a sudden change of plans, their body flips into emergency mode. The heart races, breathing becomes shallow, and thoughts narrow around worst-case scenarios. In that state, it feels urgent to do something immediately, send a reply, make a decision, fix the feeling. But panic almost always leads to poor choices because your mind is trying to escape discomfort, not solve the real issue. What you actually need in those moments is not speed, but space. Space to breathe, to observe, to separate what happened from the story you're telling yourself about it. Creating space doesn't mean doing nothing or pretending you don't care. It means deliberately delaying your reaction long enough to regain your ability to think. This can be as simple as saying, "Give me a minute," before answering, walking into another room to calm your body, or taking 10 slow breaths while you silently ask, "Is this really an emergency or just uncomfortable? What truly matters here? Do I need to act now, or do I need to think first?" Without this space, you live in constant crisis mode, making short-term emotional decisions that create long-term problems. With space, you can see options you would have missed, respond from values instead of fear, and prioritize what actually matters over what just feels loud in the moment. You build this habit by practicing in small situations, when you're annoyed in traffic, when someone's comment bothers you, when plans change last minute. Notice the urge to instantly react and instead choose stillness, even for 30 seconds. Support this mentally by creating daily pockets of quiet, morning reflection, evening journaling, time away from screens, so your brain remembers what calm feels like. Support it physically by relaxing your muscles and breathing deeper, sending your nervous system a clear signal,
we're safe enough to think. Other people may pressure you to respond quickly, but your job is to protect your clarity, not to match their urgency. Not everything that feels urgent is important, and not everything that matters requires a rushed response. When you learn to create space, you become the kind of person who can hold steady when others fall apart. And from that steadiness, your decisions become wiser, your actions more effective, and your life far less controlled by panic.
In the middle of stress, confusion, or emotional chaos, most people never stop to ask themselves the one question that could shift everything. What would actually help right now? Instead, they keep repeating the same thoughts and the same complaints, hoping that talking about the problem or obsessing over it will somehow make it smaller. It doesn't. It just keeps you emotionally stuck in the same place. Your mind loves to run to extremes. You think about how unfair things are, you imagine the worst-case future, or you replay past mistakes, but very rarely do you pause and bring your attention fully into the present moment. That is exactly what this question does. When you ask, what would actually help right now, you pull your focus away from what you wish was different and bring it to what you can do. It cuts through drama, excuses, and overthinking. Maybe what would help is tiny: drinking water, stepping outside for 5 minutes, turning your phone off, or writing down everything that's in your head. Maybe what would help is practical: finishing one small task you've been avoiding, sending an honest message, asking for clarification instead of assuming, or making a simple plan for the next 24 hours. Maybe what would help is emotional: giving yourself permission to rest without guilt, forgiving yourself for a mistake, or talking to someone you trust instead of isolating. This question doesn't ask what would feel good for a second or what would look impressive to others. It asks what would genuinely move you toward more clarity, more peace, or more progress right now. You can use it in conversations too. When tension rises, instead of trying to win or prove your point, ask yourself quietly, what would actually help this situation? Often the answer is listening more, slowing down, or choosing not to say the harsh thing your ego wants to say. The more you practice this, the more you build self-awareness. You begin to recognize your patterns, what throws you off, what grounds you, what you tend to do that makes things worse, and what reliably makes things better. You stop reacting blindly and start responding intelligently. This is not dramatic, it's simple and quiet, but it's powerful. It turns you from someone who feels trapped inside problems into someone who constantly looks for the next useful move. Over time, that one small question becomes a habit, and that habit turns chaos into direction, pressure into clarity, and difficult days into opportunities to practice real self-leadership. Complaining is one of the most common ways people throw away their energy without noticing. It feels harmless, even normal, to tell everyone how tired you are, how unfair something is, how annoying people are, or how nothing ever works out. In the moment, it can feel like release, like you're getting something off your chest. But look closely at what happens afterward. Nothing changes except your mood gets heavier, your view of life gets darker, and you reinforce the belief that you are powerless. Complaining focuses your attention on what's wrong and keeps it there, which means your creativity, your strength, and your problem-solving ability all stay locked up. If you want to live differently, you must use your energy differently. A powerful way to start is with a simple rule. Every time you catch yourself about to complain, replace it with one useful action. It doesn't have to be big or dramatic. It just has to be something that moves you one step away from the problem and one step toward a solution, however small. If you're about to complain about mess, clean one shelf, one corner, one file. If you want to complain about being behind on your work, do 10 minutes of focused effort. If you're tempted to complain about a relationship, decide whether to communicate clearly to the person involved or to accept what you can't change, but don't just repeat the same story to others.
If you're about to complain how tired or unmotivated you are, first check the basics. Drink water, move your body for a few minutes, or go to bed earlier that night. The point is not to suppress your feelings. It is to respect them enough to turn them into motion instead of more noise. Every time you trade a complaint for an action, you teach your brain a new rule. When something bothers me, I don't just talk about it, I do something. This creates momentum. You start to trust yourself more because you see yourself as someone who responds, not just reacts. The habit of complaining makes you a victim in your own story. The habit of small daily action makes you the builder of your own story. Over days and weeks, these tiny choices add up. You'll notice your conversations changing, your environment slowly improving, and your inner dialogue becoming more hopeful and solution-focused. The external changes may start small, but the internal shift is huge. You are reclaiming your power from your words and putting it back into your actions, where it has always belonged.
The moments you regret most in life almost always happen when your emotions are driving your actions and your clarity has disappeared. You say something you can't take back, walk away from something valuable, make a decision out of anger, jealousy, fear, or shame, and later think, if I had just taken a little more time, I wouldn't have done that. Emotions are not your enemy. They are signals. They show you what matters, what feels unsafe, what hurts, what you care about. The problem is not that you feel strongly. The problem is when you let that first intense wave of feeling make decisions for you. In that moment, your mind is telling a very loud, very biased story that comes from old wounds, fearful assumptions, or your ego protecting itself. If you act before that wave settles, you are not choosing from wisdom, you are simply trying to reduce pain or defend yourself. To live well, you must learn the skill of calming yourself in the middle of emotion so your choices stay clear. That starts with noticing your own signals, your chest tightening, your face getting hot, your thoughts speeding up, your hands shaking, your breathing becoming shallow. Those are early warning signs that your rational thinking is about to get hijacked. When you notice them, your job is not to argue with your feelings, but to slow everything down. Breathe more deeply. Count a few seconds before replying. If needed, say, I need a moment, or step away from the situation to let the emotional intensity drop even a little. In that space, ask yourself, what do I actually want from this? When this moment is over, how do I want to remember acting? Often, you will realize that what you truly want is respect, understanding, progress, or peace, not revenge, not to win the argument, not to prove you're right. Strong people feel everything, but they don't obey every urge. They treat emotions as information, not commands. You won't be perfect at this, and that's okay. Your goal is not to never react. Your goal is to catch yourself a little earlier each time, to repair when you slip, and to keep practicing choosing response over reaction. Over time, your emotional life becomes less chaotic and more grounded. You'll still feel anger, sadness, fear, and excitement, but they will no longer toss you around. You'll be able to say, I'm feeling this, but I will choose from wisdom, not from the loudest emotion in the room. That is emotional leadership, and it protects your future from being damaged by temporary storms.
The final and often hardest part of focusing on solutions is staying committed when progress is slow and quiet. In a world where you constantly see overnight success and dramatic transformations online, your own steady, imperfect journey can feel painfully small. You put in effort, change your habits, control your reactions, and for days or weeks it seems like nothing is happening. That is exactly the point where most people quit. They mistake not fast for not working and walk away just before things begin to shift. Real change rarely moves at the speed of your expectations. It moves at the speed of consistency.
You are not just trying to get a quick result. You are trying to become a different kind of person, someone more disciplined, more grounded, more focused, more responsible. That kind of inner change doesn't always show up immediately on the outside, but it is still happening in how you think, in how quickly you recover from setbacks, in how you speak to yourself, in what you choose to do on an ordinary, unexciting day. To keep going, you have to stop measuring progress only by big, visible wins and start measuring by honesty of effort and direction. Ask yourself, am I more consistent than before? Am I handling difficulties with a bit more maturity? Am I avoiding fewer responsibilities and taking more small actions? If yes, then the process is working, even if the external results are still small. You also need to understand that stopping resets the process. When you give up because it's slow, you erase the benefits of all the days you did show up. You then start again from the beginning with less belief in yourself. That's why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation is a feeling, it comes and goes. Discipline is a decision to act according to your values and your goals, regardless of how you feel on a particular day. Some days you will move fast, some days you will barely move, but as long as you keep taking even small steps in the right direction, you are not failing. Don't compare your pace to anyone else's. You have no idea how long they have been working or what they've sacrificed. Protect your focus from unrealistic timelines and social media illusions. Respect your own journey. Slow progress is not a sign that you're weak. It's a sign you are doing real work, not chasing shortcuts. The only way you truly lose is if you stop. So keep going. Keep choosing action over excuses, responsibility over blame, clarity over panic, and solutions over problems. One day you will look back and realize that everything you wanted was built not by a single big moment, but by thousands of small, steady choices you refused to give up on.